Monsieur Anber.
Monsieur Cassaman, how are you,
Hey,
brother?
I got a surprise for you.
What's that? Oh, bang, look at that.
Hey, I knew you'd be happy that I joined the party there with our matching mugs or similar.
Very
The
good.
name's a difference.
But you see left-handed mug yours as well, right?
Yeah,
It's
I believe that was the
left-handed.
same for everyone.
Yeah, all right, salute to your health, brother. Hey, I'm very excited.
Because of who's going to be joining us in a few moments here.
Perfect.
And for those, yeah, it's another quiet week in terms of fights in the world of boxing. There's some news, some developments, but I think it's going to start to heat up progressively here. And we figured part of the people we want to bring on are people we know, people who have good conversations with us. And
I want to bring on legends. I want to bring people who are boxing people. I want to bring people who understand boxing. It's not just, from the YouTube era, real fight guys. That's what I want.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a perfect way to kind of introduce our guest here this evening, because when you look at, I think, Russ, we agree when it comes to trainers, you have some trainers who've been around the game for a little while, and it's not always their fault. Like, they're going to develop into better or more longer careers as trainers. But a bit like musicians, in a sense, that artists and bands, it's easy to get kind of that quick success for a few years, but to maintain it over decades, I believe, as whether it's music or trainers in this case, it's not easy to do. And I think in the case of Abel Sanchez, who will be with us here in a matter of moments, he's really there when it comes to the coaches who've been around for decades and maintaining success and still having fighters to this day on the world stage.
And stuck by his principles. And he's the boss. He's the guy calling the shots. From an old school era. When we say old school, Abel is one of them. From his methods, from how he handles his fighters, from his persona in the boxing world. This is really a guy that I admire a lot, and proud to call my friend.
And I believe, is he a better pool player than you there,
Don't
Russ?
be silly.
As Abel, we welcome Abel to the program, the Calling Russ Anber edition. Abel, thank you for doing this.
Hello, Matt. Hello, Mr. Anber.
Yes.
I respect my elders. You notice that?
I will say this, though, Matt. You brought up the pool thing. If I have to make a list of my best pool players that I've ever played from the sport of boxing, having said that, I have never played Manny Pacquiao, and Manny Pacquiao is a very good player, but I've never played him. But if I had to pick my best guys I ever played, in no particular order, it would be Roy Jones, Liam Smith, and Abel Sanchez. So he ranks up there. That's not it's not bad company to be in.
Great company.
And Abel, besides the pool, though, first of all, how have you been during this pandemic? And are you keeping busy still with the situation we're seeing in boxing, a bit more fights developing? But how have you maintained kind of the summit, if you will, in Big Bear, which is kind of one of the biggest, more prestigious places for fighters to train, and the visual evidence we've seen over the years, of course?
Actually, we're doing well. We're healthy. The fortunate thing for me is it's a private gym, so the public is not allowed. We have David Benavides right now, who's training at our gym for his fight on March the 13th, I believe. I have of my own. I have 6 fighters in my gym that are training for fights in February and in March. I have Dominic Brazil, who's going to fight the 20th of February. I have Rafael Simeon, who fights on the 5th, and Cecilia Braekhus fights on the 13th of March. So we're trying to stay busy, trying to cope with all the issues. We're getting tested in the gym. It seems like 3 times a week, everybody from different camps. So I end up getting tested with everybody else. So I'm happy about that, because at least we know where we're at.
Yeah, it's a reality, I think, that a lot of people are adjusting to the training camps, because you're bringing sparring partners. You got to be careful, but at the same time, you want to have a camp that's somewhat similar to a real fight. And you mentioned for Cecilia Braekhus there, so she still wants to continue as being one of the best pound for female fighters. I thought she flirted with retirement, but she wants that rematch and she wants to continue her career.
Yeah, unfortunately for Cecilia, the COVID really became a big problem for her last year. She spent 8 months in my camp preparing for that fight. That's a long time to be in camp by yourself. Nobody else was in camp. She was living there and not really training, but being isolated from her family, because she didn't want to go back to Norway and get anybody sick on a plane, getting sick on a plane and then getting somebody sick at home. So she spent 8 months. She was really drained, I believe. Anyway, she is going to get the rematch, and we're going to see if it was a fluke, or maybe Jessica is that much better, or is better.
And before we brought you on, we are talking about the decades here. And I think we need to start because a lot of people recognize you in the recent years in boxing. But when you look at the decades, and for those who you don't know, for who did you start out with, or how did you start in boxing, and kind of your fighters and your first fighters who came onto the pro stage, if you will, in the 80s?
Well, first of all, I'm a general building contractor, and I started my business in 1974, which I was 18 years old, almost 19 years old back then. And when I started my business, my first employee was a young man that I grew up with. So in close to the late 70s, we started going to kickboxing school and started kickboxing myself. So I migrated from that into boxing. And so I started training in a gym who was owned by who's my assistant now, my amateur coach. His name is Ben Lira. In 82, because of, I'm one of those people that likes to really focus everything on what I'm doing, and I wanted to focus a lot on the training and everything. I was really not paying attention to my business, so my business was suffering. So I had to retire in 82 from that. Back in 86, I came back. 1986, I came back and started training a young man named Lupe Aquino.
I remember Lupe.
Who Top Rank was promoting. They promoted 4 fights for him, and then we fought, actually 3 fights, and then we fought Dwayne Thomas for the title in France in 1987. So that was my first world champion. I fought Emanuel Steward, I think 5 or 6 times, and I think I'm up on him 4-2 or something like that, 4-2 or 3-1 or something. But anyway, so then once I came back from France, I was contacted by a manager down in San Diego, and then they offered me Terry Norris and Orlin Norris. At the time, I think Terry had maybe 4 or 5 fights, and Orlin had maybe 8 or 9. So I started training them. So they became world champions. So my first 3 out of the gate were, fortunately for me, were crowned world champions. My 4th fighter was a young man named Paul Vaden.
I remember Paul Vaden as well.
Who eventually became IBF champion also at 154 pounds. So then it just evolved from there. I moved back to Riverside and was training guys up in Big Bear. And in 2001, I had a heart attack. So I somewhat retired, but not really retired from boxing. I stopped training guys. I was training at the time. I had Francois Bota, Miguel Angel Gonzalez, and several other young kids. But because of the heart attack, I retired and concentrated more on my business. In 2008, I started to build the Summit, build the gym. I'd already built the building, actually. I built the building in 2001, and it was being used by my children for a ski resort house, vacation house. So I converted it into the gym that it is now in 2008. I opened it in 2009. In 2010, Golovkin walked into my gym and things changed.
Abel, isn't there a story related to Emanuel giving his blessing as far as Big Bear went, or as far as the Summit went, something?
Well, Emanuel came up here to train Oscar back in 99, I believe, or 2000. And he was training Oscar, and we opened up Kronk West, which was a building on the boulevard. It used to be now it's a paint store. So we opened up Kronk West, we remodeled it, and he ran it for a little while. And in the meantime, I was designing my building. And I designed it really with the thought in mind of Emanuel and Lennox using it. I have in the main house, there's actually two houses, one 2,800 square foot house and one 3,200 square foot house. It's like a duplex. And then my gym down below is a private gym, is 4,000 square feet. So when I designed the main unit, I designed it in mind with Emanuel having one master bedroom and Lennox having the other master bedroom. It's got all 6-foot jacuzzi tubs, high doors. Everything was designed for Lennox to be comfortable there. But Emanuel was just too busy. Emanuel just has so much stuff going on that it was impossible for him to stay up here. He needed a private jet just to get on and off 2-3 times a week. So It ended up that Emanuel finished because he never really came back. But I didn't really open it until 2009. Like I said, it stayed vacant. I mean, it stayed, all the electricity, the water, the gas, everything was on. My kids used it once in a while. And then I saw kind of the the bust of the economy in 2007, 2008. So I figured that I better do something, because I actually retired from construction, do something besides construction. So I designed the gym so that, or finished the gym so that my friends could use it and I could get rental income from it. It ended up that I was the one using it, and fighters started coming in. And like I said, Golovkin came in probably May of 2010. And when I first caught him on the mitts, I thought, oh boy, I can do something with this guy. So it got me right back in it.
When I was fortunate enough to have known Manny before, like he was really the household name or the legend that he became in boxing, more so from his amateur days, you know, when he had all those kids and then turned them pro, and you know, this gym was emerging out of Detroit onto the pro scene, and that's when Hilmer Kenty came along and Tommy came along. Right. So we're kind of remember our times from then. And I remember when he came to Montreal and he came with Hilmer Kenty to watch Gaetan Hart fight, because potentially they were gonna fight each other. And I always respected Manny, because it was the same thing with John Davenport, of like this old school style trainer that, you know, worked with the amateur kids, brought them up, turned them pro. You know, he did that groundwork, that grunt work that a lot of guys had not done. So in your time in the sport, how much have you seen a difference, Abel, from when you entered the game to what it is today?
Well, let me say first about Emanuel. Emanuel was, I guess you'd call him a mentor. He was one that would sit down and talk to you about boxing. He was one that would sit down and share his experiences and share whatever knowledge he thought he had. He wasn't afraid to talk to you about anything. In fact, if you see this on my shirt here, this was put on the next day after he passed. I put that on my shirt in memory of him. Emanuel was a good friend. I worked the corner with him in many fights. In fact, I worked the last fight I worked with him was the Klitschko fight. I worked cuts for him in the Klitschko fight when he fought the French kid. I forget his name now, but I think it's changed a lot. But by being around Emanuel, I think that I developed the sense of it changed, but it didn't change for me. He used to say this to me. He said, "Just you got to do the KISS method. You got to keep it simple, stupid." You know, all these people have all these ideas, and all these ideas are being tested on the fighters that your fighters are being guinea pigs, and all these things that are being tested. He said, "Go back and look at videos. Go back and look at so and so, and see if those fighters did the new things and they were great fighters." I mean, he would talk about guys that he actually trained and sparred with, and I'm not gonna say fought, but he was around a lot of the great fighters. So he didn't believe in a lot of the new stuff. So I kind of got that same idea that's what kind of coach I wanted to be. Before I fought him with Lupe Aquino, before I fought his fighter, I saw him work a corner, and I remember saying to myself, "That's the kind of coach I want to be in the corner." You know, that's the kind of coach that his instructions, his way of being in the corner, his demeanor, his calmness, all that to me was exceptional. And that's the kind of coach that I wanted to be in the corner. Because I think a lot of fights are won and lost in the corner. And it's important that we communicate with our fighters the way that he was communicating with his. So that's why I say he was like a mentor to me. So in my development as a coach, my development came from remembering the things that he had talked about, remembering the things that he had done, and watching videos of fighters that I thought were special. One of the fighters that I thought was special, and I've watched so many videos of him, is Alexis Arguello. I love the way he used his left hand.
Of course.
And if you look at any of my fighters, their left hand is the most important hand. We use it in a lot of different ways. So as we grow older in coaching, the fighters themselves kind of teach us. As we teach them, they teach us also, I believe anyway. We learn from all of them. But I've been fortunate. I've had the opportunity, the blessing of working with a lot of very good fighters that were willing to give me their all, give me their time. You can't teach somebody if they don't want to learn.
And you have no problem dismissing guys if they're not ready to work the way Abel Sanchez wants to work. Then you're okay with saying adios, amigo.
Oh, absolutely. I never started it for the money. I started it because I wanted to be the best that I could be and have my fighters be the best that they could be. Like I'm the best pool player in the world right now. Um, you laugh like that's funny. But anyway, no, I'm not afraid of dismissing anybody because at the end, when the fight's over, they're going to blame us. They're going to blame the coaches. We get the blame, but we never get the credit. They get in the interview and I want to thank my manager. I want to thank my promoter. The coaches in the back not getting any kind of recognition. So I felt that like if it was going to be my fault that we lost, then I wanted it to be my fault. We're going to do things my way. And if you don't like my way, that's okay. Honest, there's another guy that wants to learn. So thank you very much. Have a happy career, but it's not going to be with me.
And you're also one of those guys who, again, I liken us to coming from the same era, but you're also one of those guys that you didn't keep your boxing training just boxing training. You do all aspects of working a corner. You wrap hands, you do cuts, you're the chief in the corner. The way the guys used to be, there wasn't these specialty positions. There were a trainer. When you were a trainer, that's what you did.
Russ, when I first started, as you also, I may be a little older than you, but when I first started, there was no money to pay the cut man. There was no money to pay somebody to wrap your hands. I have I'm fortunate that I have a friend in Mexico who's a promoter. His name was Guillermo Mayen. And when I was training Terry Norris down in San Diego, he would have a show twice a month. And so I would go down there and I would wrap a whole dressing room, not the main event, but the rest of the dressing room. I would wrap it for free because I was Terry Norris's trainer and Lupe Quino's trainer. The kids were excited that I was going to be down there and wrapping their hands. I would take my tape and I would take my own gauze and I would wrap their hands. And when you do that 40, 50 times a year, you get to know different hands. You get to learn. You get to practice. I got to work cuts in Mexico in them days. Only the title fights were allowed to use medicine. You had to use ice and pressure in some of the smaller fights. So you learn how not to panic. You learn how to do the things that you need to do. So in the 40-some years that I've been doing it, I've never had an assistant in my gym. I do all my strength and conditioning. I do all my nutrition. I do everything myself. So I think that art has been lost. A lot of these guys today, they have 4 or 5 guys in the corner and none of them agree with each other. Yeah. And I think that's detrimental to the training of a fighter.
Yeah, and probably, I'm sorry, Matt, I was just saying, and probably, there's so much focus on other things and the focus isn't on the most important things, whether it pertains to the actual, what's going on in the gym or the actual teaching of fighting. And I think sometimes that gets lost and we try to substitute that knowledge with other things, whether it be performance enhancing drugs or legal drugs or weight conditioning programs or strength and conditioning programs. And sometimes we forget, the thing that we're in is boxing, and that sometimes gets pushed to the side.
Yeah. There's not a pill or a powder that's going to make you Sugar Ray Robinson. I'm sorry.
No, that's right.
If I can interject here, gentlemen, for a second, because there's a lot of good stuff to unpack. And I think Abel, the fighter you worked with Klitschko, might have been against Jean-Marc Mormec.
Yes, Mormec. That's right. Mormec. It was in I believe it was in Frankfurt.
That's exactly right. 2012.
Yeah.
And there's something I think it was interesting that you brought up about the fact that, and Russ, you said you're not afraid to necessarily change fighters and say, hey, somebody else will train you if you don't want to train this way. But isn't that something in boxing I see compared to other sports where whether it's football, basketball, the coach is signed by the team and he kind of dictates to the players. His contract is assured in a sense. While as fighters now, especially with kind of this attitude that if you don't follow me and you don't listen to me, I'm going to dismiss you. So the trainers, in a sense, are afraid maybe sometimes to interject as much as they want because they know they're one bad, fight away or disagreement away from being released, and then they have no revenue for all the work they did, all the hours trainers put into the gyms with amateur fighters and pro fighters for sometimes very little pay, and then they finally get the guy who gives them a bit of revenue, and they could get dismissed easily. Isn't that one of the toughest things for fighters, how it's a bit ungrateful for trainers, in the sport of boxing compared to other sports where the coaches are guaranteed a contract?
Go ahead, Abel.
Unfortunately, both Russ and I have been through that those situations. The sad part about it is the coach is the one that really determines a win or a loss, determines how far the fighter is going to go, determines whether he's going to be ready or not for a particular event. The coach has the most time invested, yet is the one that's not protected in a fighter's career. The coach is the only one nowadays. In my situation, I'm sure Russ's situation now, as a coach, we have contracts. But if you talk to any coach that's coaching fighters right now that hasn't made a name for himself, they don't have a contract. They don't have any protection. So the manager's protected, the promoter's protected, the sponsor's protected, but yet the coach who has everything to do with win or lose is not protected. As my friend here in town, Joe Goosen, has been fighting for the last 30, 35 years with the commission about a contract for the coach. He calls it intellectual property that we give to the fighters that we are never going to get back when they leave. They go away with all this knowledge and we get nothing for it. When a CEO of a big company is there for, say, 10 years or 8 years and does well with the company, they go away with an umbrella. They go away with a severance pay. They go away with a big contract. We go away with our tail between our legs and being told how terrible we were.
That's a very good point. And, you know, Abel's right about that. When I started with pro fighters, I never had a contract with anybody. Any fighter I had, Otis Grant went through my entire career, never had a contract with him. The Montreal Athletic Commission, or the Quebec Commission, mandated that if you were to represent the fighter, they made it that you had to have a contract with your fighter. So they made us have a contract, which okay. And and they even prepared the contract for you. It was very straightforward. You know, this is what the percentage is. This is what you're owed, because they were doing it after the investigation in 1980, you know, with the death of Cleveland Denny on the undercard of Leonard and Duran. You know, they revamped the whole athletic commission, the whole bit. And by chance, I signed one of my fighters, who will remain nameless for now. We signed it as a mere formality. Well, less than a year later, a manager came on the scene and started, you know, sweet talking the kid and do this, that. And the kid said, well, you know what, I'm leaving. And I said, oh, wait a second. I got a contract, you know, I never had that before. So it did offer me a little bit of protection. But then again, you know, with in the case of David Lemieux, which was my doing, I just released it a la Abel and just said, like, I couldn't do this. This wasn't working, that wasn't driving, and released it. So I perfectly understand, Abel, what you're saying. And I also know that neither of us are motivated by the money and motivated by the passion for the sport of doing it. I've always tried to create a revenue for myself outside of boxing, outside of training fighters and being in the gym. Everything I did was to supplement my training program. If we made money boxing, good. If we didn't, I'm doing it because I love it.
Yeah, you know, there's also the side that you can look at that, like, sometimes it's okay for a fighter to go somewhere else. I'm not saying that that they should stay with somebody for the rest of their lives, but I think that there needs to be compensation for when they leave in a situation, when they're leaving a coach has been there. You know, I wrote an article, and I'm going to send it to you, Russ. I wrote an article back in 1996 when Oscar De La Hoya was, 96, 97, when De La Hoya was splitting from Roberto Alcazar. And the article said it's a disturbing trend, is what it was. And what the article was about coaches being let go and then being badmouthed after you've done all your, for nothing, after you've not spend time with your family, not spend time with your children, you spend more time with your fighters, and how they were, instead of talking about us when you let us go, say at least acknowledge what we've done. But anyway, it was published by Flat Top, who unfortunately passed away. Flat Top, and put in Fight News back in 1996, 97. It's just one sheet, but it's interesting, some of the things that I say in there, because it was bothering me then, and I had not gone through what I've gone through since.
Yeah, Abel, because I think a lot of people have asked about this. You've talked about this, about your relationship with Golovkin, and you said how much when he came to the gym, you knew this was going to be a possible star, and he did become a star, an awesome, and a Hall of Famer. Is it something now that you look at him in his career? How is the relationship? Is there any relationship with Golovkin? Do you not talk to him at all? Do you kind of look at it from a distance and root for him, but not? Or how would you describe the relationship now with Triple G that you've parted ways for a little while now?
Well, as Russ mentioned, sometimes managers and advisors and people that have nothing to do with the sport, that know very little about all the struggles and pain that you go through to get to a certain point, all of a sudden they know everything. All of a sudden these people are coaching, and these people are advising what is best in their best interest. So Unfortunately for our relationship, Golovkin and I, people came in like that, and all of a sudden he didn't. It was a money thing. It was, why should you be spending so much money when you're already there? You don't need to be spending that kind of money. And so that sours it. Once it starts, it never gets better.
Yeah.
Because it's in the back of their mind, all they're doing is just hashing it out in the back of their mind, and it becomes sour. It just becomes to the point where it's not worth. I'll tell you, it wasn't about money so much for me in that relationship. It was money, yes, because he wanted to cut it. But if I could have agreed to what he was trying to pay me, but how would I? I like to believe that I have good character. So how would I have reacted in a fight? Let's just say one of the tough fights that he would have had after we've settled on a number. How would I have reacted in the corner if it would have been a difficult fight? If it would have been a fight where I need to stop a cut? If it had been a fight where he's getting pummeled, and because I took into consideration his age too. He's getting older. So I didn't want to be put in that situation. So my decision was based on several factors. And one of them was that I didn't want to be put in that situation where I had to make a decision how I'm going to take care of this man whose life or death is in my hands. So I based my decision on, like I said, on several factors. And to answer your question, I have no relationship with Golovkin. He has got a different coach. I don't want to interfere with anything that he's doing. I wish him the best. But I don't think it was fair what was done, but that's in the past, and we go forward.
And that's unfortunately sums up with, that is boxing, and it's, yes, you're not the first guy, you're not going to be the last guy, and it's sad that it goes that way. You know, I feel even sometimes worse for it doesn't happen often, but the cases where a fighter has a trainer who's been with him through his entire amateur career, has developed him, moved him along through the pro ranks, moved him into a contender's position, all until we reach that point. As we know, there's no money there, right? There's not a lot that's happened. And now the payday comes in and the vultures start hovering, right? They're around. And the next thing you know, the guy who brought the fighter to that point, you know, is the guy, the trainer who brought the fight at that point is let go. And I feel for them, you know, I feel for them. I think it's heartbreaking that there's no recognition or compensation, that guy brought you all that way, and then you, adios amigo.
And it's not only the compensation, it's how you treat them, how you badmouth them, how you didn't do this for me. This is why I look bad in my last fight. No, you look bad because you were out partying.
Yeah.
The other thing too is in my gym. That's why I love having a private gym. In my gym, there's nobody allowed but the fighters. I don't have managers in there. I don't have promoters in there. Why? Because if you send me a fighter, I don't want your fighter to be talked to or buzzed by somebody else. My reputation in my gym, and people come to my gym, and managers send fighters to my gym because they trust the fact that nobody's going to get things whispered in the ear. The vultures come out.
And how difficult do you think that is going to be going forward to control? Because it seems with social media, there's just more and more people now who want to be involved. And as soon as they see somebody who could be a possible cash cow in the sport, right? And they want to have a say in it. And sometimes they don't even know necessarily all that goes into it, the sacrifices. They want to come in for the quick fix. Is it going to be more difficult? Have you guys found or able, when you're training fighters now, that social media and all that noise is becoming more and more a distraction sometimes in the fighter's career?
Yes, it's going to be difficult, but I think that I speak out, and I say the things that I'm not shy about saying what happened to me and what's happened to me and what's happened to other friends, but I'm saying it only to educate our younger coaches that are coming up, to understand that cash cow can't make it without Russ, without an Abel, without a Freddie, without a Robert. That cash cow needs us, but we need to understand, we need to protect ourselves at the beginning. If we protect ourselves at the beginning, at least we have something, as Russ mentioned in that unmentioned fighter, something to back us up. Maybe it's not what it could have been, but at least it's something that we don't just get thrown out like dirty laundry.
Yeah, I agree. Matt, did you happen to see the clip I sent you? I tagged you in it about a discussion that Matthew and I had, you know, reverting back to what we said, what the difference in boxing now is what it was. We did a discussion last week, and this just came to my mind, thinking about the great era of the light heavyweights in the late 70s and early 80s.
Matthew Saad,
right?
Galindez,
Right?
Rossman. Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh, that's right. I mentioned all those guys, right? And I kind of threw it out there, telling people, I defy you to name me a division that was so. I mean, it was
Eddie Gregory.
Yeah, Eddie Mustafa, exactly.
Yeah.
And what a division that was, and people started answering your thoughts on that, Abel, like that era. I know every division goes through an era where, wow, you were cursed to be in that, you're in that division, because it was almost going to be impossible to win a title. But from boxing perspective and from fans, that was a hell of a division.
Yeah, Russ, it's going to be very difficult for that to happen again, and I'll tell you why. Because these kids are businessmen before they're boxers now.
Yeah.
In those days, even in the '80s, when Hearns and Leonard and Duran and Hagler and Benitez and all those guys, they fought each other. A loss is a death sentence because of TV, because of how they announce you. So it's going to be difficult for that to happen again, because these kids ain't going to fight each other. Just take, for instance, the lightweight division right now with 4 or 5 kids that are really very, very good fighters.
Yeah.
They're going to keep talking. They're going to keep talking until, they're 40 years old, and they're not going to fight each other. And that's sad. That's sad, because the best fighting the best is the way that it should be. And it's not happening, and it's not going to happen.
Abel, is it fair to say that, back in that era, we'd already have the Lomachenko-Lopez rematch signed already?
No, absolutely.
It would have been
absolutely
right. It would have been done.
Yeah, and then the winner of that would have fought one of the other tough lightweights, and then the winner of that would have fought the guy that lost. It would have been like a round robin.
Yeah.
And they made each other great because they fought each other.
Yeah.
And you bring up a great point here. I think one of the divisions also, correct me if I'm wrong, but Terry Norris was involved in some deep divisions. He had to go through some tough guys to get compared to what some of these divisions in the junior middleweight have been in the last few years and stuff.
Yes. But because they were willing to fight each other, they weren't talking about, what's this number I'm hearing from Lopez about going and fighting for 10 million or 6 million, or he's not going to go to Australia, something like that. Come on, you have to understand what's in it. I made a comment back after I finished with Terry Norris. I says, what it should be, say it's $1. Say 60 cents to the champion, 35 cents to the challenger, and a balance to or 50 cents to the champion. So that way that you have an incentive to win.
Yeah.
You don't just guaranteed and you're guaranteed a certain amount and boom. So if you're going to get 6 million, you're only going to get 2. And if you win, you're going to get the rest. There's got to be some kind of incentive for these guys to not only train harder, watch themselves, make sure that they make the fight with steroid use the way that it is, and COVID the way that you take care of yourself, so not canceling. There's so many reasons not to fight. It's easier to give an excuse than really to get in the ring.
And there's one flaw though, Abel, with that is that, and we see it, like to put that result and put those millions in the hands of some of those judges might not be the wisest managerial.
That's true, but we're always going to have, unfortunately, we're always going to have that situation. But I did make another point about putting the judges in a room where there's no crowd, putting in the judges in a particular room where there's a camera, just like you and I are watching the fight. That's how the fans watch it. That's how the fans at home watch the fight.
Right.
And you tend to see more of what's actually happening in the fight when you watch it on TV, because you get replays. Let the judges be subjected to the replays also. Let the judges make a decision by seeing everything and not just seeing in the moment. That's how we in the stands react too. Oh God, that was a great shot. Maybe it didn't even land from our
position. Didn't land.
Right. So maybe taking the judges out of the equation in ringside and putting them somewhere where they're not going to be influenced.
Hey, but the other thing that I think they should also do is they're as a trainer, when you pay your license, you're under observation from the athletic commission the moment you walk into the dressing room. If you do something wrong, they threaten that you can't work the corner. They'll fine you. They'll suspend you. They can do what they want. How come judges aren't accountable for the cards that they register?
Funny you say that. I also 10 years ago, 11 years ago, I made a suggestion of putting the judges like they do in the NFL on a number system, on a grading system, where
Yeah.
there's a panel that grades them. Okay, if you did this fight, you're going to get a certain grade. And the more numbers you get, you're going to work the big fights. You're going to get those assignments. And I think that would keep them a little bit honest, a little bit more honest, I should say. And the panel that judges them should be revolving. It should be changing every month, a month and a half. So nobody gets to the point where they're complacent on their job.
I've also said, and I don't know if you will understand what I mean. I don't know if the layman necessarily does, but I often feel that the judges sometimes, oh no, let me rephrase it. A fighter sometimes is too good for the person that's judging them. And I always use Juan Manuel Marquez as an example of the subtleties that he used to do, where he would literally be able to block a punch this far from his face, and to the guy sitting here, oh, he almost got hit with that. Oh, he almost got, but he didn't, or he's rolled with it, or he did a move and then hit you with a little short shot on the inside that nobody saw. And, we see it as fight guys. We say, oh my God, that's beautiful. That's great. But the layman doesn't see it. And sometimes the layman doesn't appreciate those finer things that every one of us tries to teach our fighters in the gym. And when they execute it to perfection, it's a thing of beauty, but it's missed by the layman. It's like a magic trick, right? You can't catch the magician doing the trick.
The reason it's missed, Russ, is because of what you said about how boxing has changed. Those things are not being taught anymore.
Right.
Parrying with your hands and just sliding the shots off. Those things are not taught no more. And they're not taught because now not only the fathers are getting involved, but there's young coaches that a young man walks into the gym and becomes a champion, let's just say. Now all of a sudden he's got 4 or 5 other guys and he hasn't had time to develop those things. So there's hundreds of coaches now that are just coaching fighters to fight, not teaching them how to fight, not teaching them those little situations that used to be that are not today.
It's a absolutely great point, but we talk about it all the time, and it's been a great conversation. I feel like it go on for hours, but I want to at least get your thoughts also. Speaking of the new trends that are a bit disturbing, these exhibitions and the attention. You talked about the lightweights that could possibly face each other, but Ryan Garcia is looking to move up against Pacquiao. Interesting fight, of course, if it's a fight, not so much if it's an exhibition. But we're seeing now the attention with the Jake Pauls of the world. Mayweather yesterday saying he's coming back for exhibitions. Do you think it hurts the credibility of the sport or the attention that maybe some of the real fighters deserve? Or do you think somehow the sport can benefit from this attention that it's getting?
I think that we have to put into perspective. I'm all for anybody making money. I'm all for anybody having an idea to make money, and I congratulate them for doing that. Just don't confuse yourself with a fighter. I think that the Pauls have to. If what they're doing is great, if they're getting a lot of attention and they're making money, just don't confuse yourself with thinking that you can compete with the guys that do this for a living. Nate Robinson or whatever the young man's name was a prime example. Yes, now the Pauls I have a kid right now in my gym that fights on the 5th. He's got 9 fights and I'd fight both of those kids in the same night. He's a light heavyweight. He'd be spotting them pounds, but we just have to remember that these are exhibitions and don't mistake them for fights. Oh, you're going to fight Floyd Mayweather, you're going to knock him out? Be serious.
But you know what though, Abel, and if we go back, let's go back to the beginning. If you had a kid that walked into your gym that came out of I don't know, an amateur program, was really good, but he was a hustler kind of kid and he sold tickets for shows, like this guy sold tickets out of his ass, right? But what, not necessarily was he very good, could have been just an exciting kid, but he sold tickets. We would be going to the promoter and saying, I got a kid, you don't even have to pay me, we'll sell tickets, give me tickets, I will pay us in tickets, because so the fact that Jake Paul and his brother have created this revenue stream where people will pay. The only reason they're able to command the money that they're getting is because people are paying for it.
Right.
Bro, we'd be happy to have that kid.
Great, of course. No, I like I said, I'm happy for anybody that finds a way to make money, finds a way in this business to promote the business. Just don't confuse what you're doing with the Golovkins, the Canelos, the Mayweathers. Don't confuse yourself with those guys. You're not at that level yet. Now, eventually you may get there. given maybe 6, 7, 8, 10 years like these other guys have, that's great. As far as Ryan Garcia, I think Ryan Garcia is a good little fighter, but he still has a lot of amateurish in him. I think that 2, 3 years from now, he may be on that level, but you can't say he's going to fight the #1 welterweight in the world when he's a 135-pounder moving up 2 divisions in fight Manny Pacquiao. Whoever sanctions that should be shot.
Right. But you know what? The kid comes to fight. You can't,
No. And you know what? And he promotes himself very well too.
Yeah.
That's very important. He promotes himself. It just give yourself, don't accelerate the process. You'll get there a couple of years from now. And when you get there, you'll be a heck of a fighter because you do have some skills.
The only thing that I get scared about, and I get scared about this even when they say it's a real pro fighter, I think it's sad that somebody like a Nate Robinson was able to get a professional license.
Yes.
You know, you probably wouldn't have made that match on an amateur card because the guy who had Nate Robinson would have said, nah, my kid's not ready for your guy, you know, and you wouldn't have made that match. And you allow, you know, the same commission that worries that you put too much Vaseline on, Vaseline can be dangerous, you know, that the same commission that admonishes you for putting Vaseline on, it gave this guy and got him hurt, and it could, you know, could have been much more serious than it was, but it wasn't nice to see somebody like that hit the deck the way he hit it. It was hurtful to see that.
Yeah, there's some states, unfortunately, here in the United States that are very, very hard on the matchmakers. Yeah. They won't make a match. Guys that are evenly matched, sometimes they won't make a match because he hasn't had an 8-rounder or he hasn't had a 10-rounder. I mean, good fighters or good opponents against a good fighter. Good opponents that's how a good fighter is built. That's how a star is made, fighting journeyman fighters. And to say that a Nate Robinson goes in against a guy that really was a 6-round fighter against a less than an amateur, just unfair to the guys that are trying to make fights, the matchmakers and the promoters trying to make fights for a show, a competitive fight for a show, when that one was so not competitive. You know, I from the beginning, I develop a system for myself, for my gym, to make sure that my guys are at a certain level. Because when we fight, I want to make sure that we're competitive, we're in shape, so that we don't have those tragedies that have happened in the past. That right there was a tragedy in the making. Fortunately, he didn't get seriously hurt, but somebody's going to get hurt. They keep doing that.
Absolutely. Matthew, go ahead. I'm sorry, you want to say something?
Well, I don't know if you have any final thoughts, because we could be doing this all night, soaking this wisdom. There's never a shortage of topics, and I just love all I've been hearing here. But I believe Mr. Abel Sanchez got to get to eat supper at one point there, Russ. I don't know if you have a final part.
Before he goes, we've talked about the hobby. Let's talk about the real profession. How's your pool game coming along, son?
You know what? Because I was going to talk to you tonight, I kind of pulled out the case that new cue that you gave me. I didn't pull the cue out because I didn't want to be sad that it's just sitting there. But I hope to play one soon if we get over this darn virus that we got going.
I tell you what, Matt, every time I would travel somewhere and I knew that Abel was going to be there, I would call him. We wouldn't even talking about boxing. We'd say, okay, when are you ready? We're going to go play pool. And we'd go play pool for hours. And, that's something that the pandemic to me, out of everything, that's the thing that has hurt me the most. We do our jobs because we have to do it. We've been in this game all our life. But those moments that we share, for me anyways, on the pool table, that's the release. That's the time you get away. And to share it with somebody who shares the passion of boxing and pool with you on a night, what could you ask for better than that? You're a good friend, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Russ. You owe me a hamburger.
And the fries. You get the fries as well. Don't worry.
Okay.
We'll be tuning able to see, like you mentioned, a lot of fights. Dominic Brazil is next up, and it's hopefully a better 2021 than 2020. It's looking that way for the sport of boxing. And thank you so much for doing this. And we hope to do this again down the road.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to send you that sheet I was telling you about, that disturbing trend, that sheet that I wrote in '96. I'll send it to both you and Russ.
I'd love to see that, Abel.
Yeah, it's just something to think about, for us anyway, that we've been in that situation.
Of course.
But hopefully things change in the future, and I wish you the best in 2021. I hope to see you soon, and thank you for having me, man.
Gracias, hermano.
See ya.
Thank you
Stay
very
well,
much,
buddy.
gentlemen.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.